Hi, everybody, and welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. I'm going to bring in our guest, and then I'll take a break, and I'll be right back. First of all, we're going to bring in Rick Grosner, who is a former writer, Jimmy Kimmel Live, coming from Los Angeles. The Honorable Dan Worthington, former Associate Dean of the University of South Dakota School of Law, and our President of the network, Kim Calhoun. And I'm going to turn over to Kim, and I shall be right back.
Oh, all right. Hello, everyone. And thank you for watching us here on the media show. Let's talk about some of the current events that are going on in the media, which I'm unfortunately not as up to date on as I should be. But Rick, what are some of the things that you think are happening today that are impacting the media, not just for the media itself, but economically impacting us?
Well, we've gone from broadcasting to narrowcasting. In the 80s, 30 million people tuned in to see Johnny Carson every night. And Cosby had a 35 rating. I just looked up the highest rated scripted show is NCIS, that has a 0.5 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. So wow. The audience has shattered, split into a million pieces. Everybody kind of, pursuing their own interests and pursuing quality viewing, away from mainstream TV.
That's interestingly put. Do you think that podcasting and other means of streaming video on demand have taken away from that?
Yeah, I mean, people used to take what they were served in the 70s, 3 broadcast networks and then a public TV station. And if you didn't like what was on those channels, you were stuck. And now people can watch whatever they want, whenever they want. And that includes TikTok, where the entertainment is super condensed. You get a blast of entertainment in 30 seconds, and then you get another blast. So it's the way 2/3 of Americans are overweight because food is delicious now. We're also gorging on better entertainment than we had 50 years ago.
I mean, I would agree with you. We've massively become obese because we sit and don't get enough exercise, and we generally just binge watch these things at 30-second intervals, which means we're feeding our brains probably worse things than we're feeding our bodies, right? Just because it's funny or entertaining doesn't mean it's healthy or good for us. We're no longer researching or studying and in-depthly implanting seeds into our mind for a healthier mindset. But, Dan, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? This is a very deep subject.
No, the choice of entertainment is not a bad thing necessarily, and it's good in a sense that we're not stuck with just the mainstream programming, because as we know, the news has become more and more biased and left-centric, and it's propaganda basically now, and so you got that both on the left and the right. And that is not, since no one is really telling the truth, it's not healthy for the marketplace of ideas, because the truth isn't getting expressed in the marketplace of ideas. There are a lot of ideas that are out there, but are not, and everyone is claiming the other side is telling false narratives. And they're both full of crap. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, that, I know that. I try to watch both kinds of experiences to see what I think is going on. I mean, smart enough people can figure it out, but it's just a free-for-all out there, really. And a lot of it is because if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead.
Doesn't lead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick.
I work out at my local YMCA, and there's TVs in the gym, and they're not allowed to turn on either Fox News or MSNBC because they found that it was leading to arguments among the people using the gym.
Rick, it's interesting you say that because people have become non-friends because of all of this. Like they get into fights on Facebook about what was, and my point is always, one of the things I despise more than anything is a person who's talking about a speech that somebody gave, and rather than just letting that speech play and letting the narrative come from the viewers and their opinion, they decide to chop the speech up, take out what they want from it, and play their own propaganda game and give their review, thinking we're too stupid to make our own reviews. I hate that kind of media. I despise it. I despise it when they chop up speeches or chop up something that someone said in the Senate, and they pull out just what they want, leaving out the very important details or what they really meant to say, and turning it and twisting it and making it their words. But then they sit there and they tell you what to think. Oh, this is I hate that, and I despise it. And now I'm tuning out people on Facebook who are posting that crap. I don't want it. If you can't play me the whole speech, don't play me somebody telling me how to think about it. It's irritating.
So Biden is what, 79, and he also has a stutter. So what Fox and other networks, I don't know if they're doing it still, but they used to like to just grab the places where he verbally stumbled and said, well, obviously Biden has dementia. And then my old show, Jimmy Kimmel, came up with a deal where if you play Trump making a speech at half speed, he sounds drunk. Probably anybody, but like they had a whole thing. They keep drunk Trump.
I know. I mean, we need to. I personally, when I see something, I will take the full video and I will clip it and send it to the person posting the other propaganda and go, watch the full video before you try to tell me that this is the truth. And both sides were guilty of it, not just one. And, everybody thinks I'm always one side. Oh, you're for the Gulf. Oh, you're for this. No, I'm not. I'm for just the truth. I'm for
but Kim,
pull that out.
Kim, isn't part of the problem, though, that we've got into this stasis of quick media and everything? Because I don't know that you can get the full context of anybody's speech in a 30-second clip or a 30-second part of the news. And unfortunately, as we all know, the news media, and I've actually got training in that, are definitely looking for the quickest news story and the fastest news story. For example, if you got a press conference on what's going on in Memphis, I doubt very seriously that they're going to cover the entirety of what the chief said or what anybody said. They're going to give you the 30-second highlights or the 1-minute highlights because they're trying to get the news as rapidly as possible, and they're also trying to do it in a way that will get people riled up in one way or the other in that space. So that is part of the problem, is that I don't know that we are seeing journalism in the historical way where you would literally have people watching whole 30-minute shows that might have been even the debate or the interview or things of that kind of space. But, we got folks that now, I don't even know, when's the last time that we saw a full press conference that was covered as the full press conference? Like I said, we usually get clips and all of that. There are ways that you can find it on YouTube and other places if you want to watch the full version. But yeah, you can find anything and turn it around to fit whatever your narrative is. We saw that with COVID. We saw that with probably get in hot water with some of our people here, including Sasha, but we even see that with the war in Ukraine. So you can definitely flip it however you want in a getting a quick clip and all in that space. So I think that is part of the problem from a journalistic standpoint, is that and it's not just the TV side of it, it's also radio, and I would even argue print, that they are trying to not do enough deep dive into the issues, and they're trying to get the quick fix because we are a nation of folks that want things fast and in a hurry, and all in that space. But that's some of my quick thoughts. I don't know if Rick has any counters or if you have any counters.
I have a terrible, stinky analogy where the truth, I think of the truth as a big turd. It's messy, it's complicated. For instance, the relationship between Trump and Russia is fantastically complicated. And one side picks the peanuts out of the turd and says, Trump exonerated. The other side picks the corn out of the turd and says, totally, he's manipulated psychologically by Putin. And like, the truth is like takes, a lot of reading, a lot of hours to kind of, to understand, even approximate understanding, but each side just picks out the preferred nuggets from the mess.
Yum.
Sounds horrible to me.
I like that. That is funny. I love it.
But that is literally what people are doing, and unfortunately,
Well, that pretty well describes it, doesn't it?
That describes it quite accurately. It describes it maybe.
What I find funny is hilarious. Actually, is Adam Schiff, Sawal, and whatever her name is, are complaining that they weren't allowed on the committees, intelligent committees, because of politicization. And that's all they did for the last 2 years is politicize everything. So I mean, it's sort of like the pot calling the kettle black, right?
But Dan, can we say that has not been going on for a while? I mean, we had a very famous senator here in North Carolina that was known for politicizing things on a regular basis. He's passed away, but I think Kim had some dealings with him way back when. But Senator No was politicizing things way back in the 70s and even parts of the 80s. And there are a number of other folks that have been doing it even now on both sides of the aisle. And there's a number of folks that need to get off of this aisle conversation and maybe just actually sit down and have discussions about how to help their constituents, no matter whether they are black or brown, white or red, Democrat or Republican. But too often that's not the way of the narrative. It's oftentimes trying to play to your base, whatever that base is.
With gerrymandering and safe seats, there's often no upside to moving towards the center. Mm-hmm. If you're in a safely Republican or safely Democratic district, you need to win your primary.
Right.
And the people on the extreme, the more extreme somebody is in their political beliefs, up to a point where, of total craziness, the more likely they are to turn out to vote in a primary. So you have to win, the extreme voters. And there's little incentive to be in the center. And there's also little incentive, like you have to spend, if you're a congressperson, I think you have to spend roughly half your time fundraising. You have to go to this separate building that's basically a giant boiler room and get on the phone and just beg people for 20 hours or 30 hours a week for campaign fund contributions. And that kind of job doesn't necessarily attract the best people.
Oh, well, that explains why you have the subpar people right now in Congress. Because I was wondering, the other problem that I have, and this just deals with the media, is the agenda. And everybody does, a lot of people don't mention the agenda and how important it really is. It's not what the topic you're talking about. It's selecting the topics that you're going to talk about is really important, because that sets the tone. And unfortunately, what I've seen, Rick, is the media all choose the same topic. In other words, what's the hot topic of the day? And they put it on. And that hot topic of the day may not be the most important topic.
But Nick, on that same token, we have a show here that airs regularly, and I know that he uses various sources. It airs every week, and I am actually an admirer of his show, even though, and I, not just because I am one of the producers of it, but also Jeff does use various sources. I mean, he may be leaning more to the right than I would prefer and everything, but that's just my own preference. But he does bring up some very interesting issues, and he does bring different sources. He gets some of his stuff from Fox, he gets some of it from CNN, he gets some of it straight from Yahoo, and all in that spaces. So that is to say that, as he puts it, a lot of the sources have their own leaning. So he does try to get them from different sources, and of course he may put his own bent on it, whatever that bent is and everything. But definitely,
Yeah, but Jeff is not trying to convince people to believe one way or another. He's funny. He's a comedian more than, I mean, everything he's doing is truly political satire.
Right.
And so I don't put that into any aspects of what we were talking about previously. I think he's very funny. I find it very entertaining. But we have people out there who truly believe and trust other people who are delivering what is considered news, not entertainment.
No,
and
but
I think
mean,
that it
but-
needs to be changed.
No, but Kim, but is that part of that is this whole notion of what's changed over the last several months? So you got a lot of people that will literally roll into Clubhouse rooms or Discords or a number of these other news spaces and will hear various quote unquote experts speaking their viewpoint. And some of these experts may be illegitimate experts. Maybe they came out of the medical field, but they might have had a reason for wanting to go in those public Discord rooms. So that is one thing that happened over this last several years is there are several public Discord rooms, so you can bring any viewpoint that you want to, whether it's based on fact or not. And yes, some of these people have their own agendas, because there are definitely people in there that are, you can even take COVID. There are some people in there that are very anti-COVID and I mean, everybody should be anti-COVID. It's a disease, but anti-vaccine, we'll put it that way. They're very much anti-vaccine, and they will go in there using their medical training in order to tell you reasons that you should not be taking the vaccine, or if you have taken the vaccine, you don't need to take the follow-up vaccines, and all in that space. And they can bring up some very legitimate arguments, including their legitimate background, because some of these folks have very legitimate backgrounds. I mean, some of them are as much of a connected to the medical community as, say, a Fauci is, and everything in that space. But do I believe what they say? Not necessarily, but they have the right to put it out there, and that's where a lot of folks are finding misinformation. They're finding it in these very open sources, and some of the information also may be very factual and all in that space. So are we saying that we want to stop those kind of conversations from happening, and how do you even regulate those conversations from happening?
I have no clue. Yeah.
Follow the money. Follow the money. That's how.
All right, I agree with that. The news did not used to be for profit. The first 25, 30 years of news on TV, it was a public service that the broadcasters were required to do as part of the deal with the government. Government said you can broadcast along these wavelengths for free if you provide public service. The public service was the news. So the networks were like, all right, here's the news.
Hold on a second, Rick. Can we say that the news didn't have a element of capitalism? I mean, one of the biggest news barons out there was Hearst, and Mr. Hearst definitely had a lot of money involved in what he did.
But TV news was kind of a backwater in terms of making money for the networks. It didn't. It was like, all right, we have to put it on in order to have our airwaves. And then Ted Turner, I think in the late 70s, comes along with CNN and with the for-profit news model. Also the morning news shows like Good Morning America and stuff were like, hey, we can put on a 2-3 hour happy news show and make a lot of money off of ads. But CNN really started the bad habits with what Nick was talking about, the bad choices about, like right now, the guy who was murdered by cops in Memphis on all the news CNN, MSNBC is hours and hours of coverage, and it deserves lots of coverage, but it doesn't deserve
Not
like
that much.
1/4 of all the minutes. When Malaysia Air lost that jet, CNN was all Malaysia Air all the time at the expense of all this other stuff you could learn about because people were drawn to that story.
Right,
how
but
many
that's
of
what I was
us?
talking about, the agenda. Rick.
No,
Okay?
but Nick, how many of us remember even the case of the Iranian hostages? I'm going to go way back in time
Yeah,
because then we got a daily report on that every day as to how long they had been a hostage. And, we had one of the most significant newsmen of all time literally coming on just about every day to tell
Ted
us how
Koppel,
long that
half
was
an
going
hour
on.
every night.
Yeah, but Rick,
That's how Nightline started.
here's my question on the Memphis murder, and I'll just say one murder. There were over 300 murders in Memphis last year. How many of them was there a national outrage about? Do these people's lives not matter? In other words, why don't they report on the 300 other people who were murdered in Memphis last year? Are they not
But Nick,
important?
but to come
I'm
to that,
asking
I'm
Rick
sure
this
that the local stations have covered all 300 of those murders at one time or another. Now they might have only got like the time that it happened and everything, but it wasn't a national outrage. But I would
Okay,
almost
why-
guarantee
why-
to the elite.
Okay, my question, Mark, why isn't that a national outrage? Rick, why isn't that a national outrage? Where's the justice for them? Why aren't people marching in the streets for the 300 people in Memphis?
For one thing, it's not easily encapsulated. The cop murder of the guy is just clearly heinous, and it also, like, while heinous, encouraging, because those cops are going to be. I don't know what they're charged with now, but they're going to be
I think
charged.
it's second-degree murder.
Okay, so like people are overjoyed when cops are held accountable.
But,
So
what about these other people? Their lives don't matter, and accountability.
they're less easily encapsulated within a news structure.
Okay, so what you're telling me is their lives aren't important, and as this
Well,
other
not
person,
necessarily that. I mean, but what was the young lady? What was the young lady that
300
was?
people who died in
So.
Memphis.
No, I got it. I mean, people are killed left and right every day.
It
I mean, people
doesn't
are killed.
matter. What you're telling
No,
me is
I get what you're saying, Nick, but I'm just saying. But
Mark,
to
just
Rick's
just
point
tell
and
the world
everything.
that their lives
But
aren't
to Rick's point, what about those? Because
Media doesn't give a rat's
when you
for
find
either
something
the
that's easy
people
to
or justice.
capitalize, then that's easier to
If a
report
cop
on. I
kills you,
remember the
it's
young
important.
lady that was
But if you get killed
killed by her
randomly on the
parents and everything.
streets,
At least I
it's
think she was
not
killed by her
important.
parents. But the
Okay,
young lady that was
let's
over
just
there in the West and everything.
let's
Remember
just
that
come
was a
clean.
big news story.
Guys, just come clean. If a cop kills you, it's an important death. If you randomly get killed, it's not important, even though you're just as dead. Okay, so let's get clean. Those 300 people who died in Memphis, your lives aren't important.
So I mean, yeah, they're important, but you have to look at how news gets on the air.
Okay, so back to how the news gets on the air. It has nothing to do with the importance on it.
And who pays
The
them?
news
Yeah, they're important, but like somebody has to pitch this murder to their boss, and the
So
boss
it's a
has
sales
to say, "Go out and
Rick, it's a
get that
sales
story, talk to people." And
Oh, come on, it's a sales job. You know, they got to
like-
pitch a murder. Are you kidding me? You got
yeah,
to
but
pitch
I'm not saying I'm saying it's wrong, but I'm
It's
saying
wrong.
that's that's the reality of how it works. You know, like there's going to be a documentary movie or series, I think, on CNN on Kevin McCarthy's home district, which is Bakersfield, California, which is like one of the murder capitals of America, with murderous cops and cops who don't solve any crimes. And, you know, somebody had to pitch, well, look at this terrible town where murders have been going on for 50 years. And where this is now the Speaker of the House's, you know, city. And it's a terrible hellhole of murder. And so those murders are going to be focused on and getting their
There's
own.
nothing else to do in Bakersfield.
Because
can I
the flip
say?
side of what you are saying, Nick, is how many towns do we know of in the world, including some here in North Carolina? I know for a fact that Kim knows of one. She can bring it up if she wants to or not. That the police officers are not held accountable either. So and to what Rick is saying about this town in California, I could probably find several stories of different police forces around the country that are also not covered, even though the people in those communities know that those police forces are corrupt and are having issues within those police forces.
Hold it. Why aren't the drug dealers who are corrupt being held accountable? Are the drug dealers who shoot another person randomly on the streets they're not held accountable.
Well, they're
Why not?
giving
Why
money.
isn't
to
it justice
Democrats,
for the
that's why.
person who got shot by a driver?
Probably Republicans. I
I
don't know.
don't get it.
Well,
You know?
probably. Well, here's the thing. I think it's a matter of who's invested in what. And
Right.
I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and it's obviously obvious that probably a lot of these drug dealers are financed and supported and legally supported by a lot of our government people. I mean,
Illegal.
No
I
doubt
think
about
money flows in various different ways, and it's all in who
That's
is
how
in
Clinton
who.
got into it.
I mean, it's
I
a
just
bad
Clinton.
conversation.
Yeah, he was Bush.
But I'm
Bush
saying,
senior.
but not just Clinton. There's been people on both sides of
Oh,
the
I know.
aisle.
I know.
I mean, look at Trump. He was good friends with Epstein. You know, I mean, and there's many pictures of him
Everyone
over
was
the
good
years
friends
with
with Epstein.
Epstein. I mean, was he part of Epstein's plot? Party extras? We don't know. I know that over the years there are many pictures of him and Epstein together, arm in arm, like, hey buddy, how's it? Not just shaking hands or.
Yeah, and we had
So
Bill in a red
you
dress.
just never know. You never know. I mean, I see a lot in the law enforcement areas because I've been involved and I get involved.
You know why
And I
that was that way? You know why that was that way? Because Epstein actually was a Mossad operation to try to subvert and corrupt politicians and world leaders all around the world. They wanted to get the goods on them so they could influence them.
Yeah, but Trump wasn't a world leader then. He was just a Trump.
Oh, well, I mean, it
he
didn't
was
matter.
just a
We
party
were
animal
millionaires, too.
himself.
Well, the idea with the millionaires would he would blackmail them, right?
Yeah, but were there any of them in your verbiage or in your mind that were bad? Or were they
I
all
don't-
just an
I don't-
influential
I think
situation?
anybody that would engage in the kinds of things that Epstein was engaged in are evil. Or they're not good people. And so that's my definition of that. A lot of people disagree with me, including Shaquille, because to him, these are all girls that are either of age or pretty close, and they're offshore. So why not? I have a moral compass about this thing, and I think it's wrong. Here's Shaquille.
Hey, Zach. Your name
You
was just
invoked his
listed.
name.
And you were
All I heard was that I will disagree about something and it has to do with the moral compass, and I actually don't know what you're talking about. But yes, I take it I've disagreed.
Grab the pot, the lantern, and
Epstein. You
I
didn't
should-
think
Right
that-
now, perfectly, Shaq.
I thought
Russia
we were-
has spent $300 million
grab the
over the
lantern,
past.
say his name, and he appears.
his
Shaq.
name and he appears.
So Russia has spent $333 billion over the past 10 years subverting Western democracies.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And that's such a bargain. It's not, I mean, that's $30 million a year to create chaos
Right.
in all these other countries.
Yeah.
And even without Russia, I have Twitter brain. Over the weekend,
Soros has spent more.
the Lakers lost a game because of a terrible no call on LeBron James at the end of the game.
Wow.
And I just started tweeting like crazy. And I realized after like 4 tweets, it's like, I've tweeted more about this stupid basketball game than I've tweeted about the murdered Memphis guy. And
Yeah, but Rick, since we're going to talk about that, did you tweet about the bad call of where they couldn't decide whether it was a timeout or not a timeout in the championship game between Kansas City and Cincinnati? Because I'm sitting there going like, don't y'all know how to keep
I
track?
tried to get
timeouts?
my head. I wasn't watching it, but I read, hashtag NFL fixed. So yeah, that was a big controversy, but I didn't feel qualified because I didn't watch that part of the game.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just
Hey,
saying.
Shaquille, what city are you in? Where are you at now?
I'm in Dubai at the moment. It's probably the screen's probably a bit too reflective, but
Okay.
yeah, no, I'm in Dubai. I've just arrived here
Can you
this
see
morning.
the Burj Khalifa, that big building they built there, that monument to
Uh,
capitalism?
the Burj Khalifa is on a different
All right.
section to where I'm staying on the Palm Jumeirah. So,
He's on-
but no,
he's on-
I just want to address a couple of things. So, Rick, this language that we use, becomes very strong and I think over exaggerated. Russia certainly and China have been accused of running ads and all this sort of stuff, but the idea that it's subverting democracy and causing chaos, I think that this is overstating it. I think this is the media trying to drum stuff up, right? People from all over the world and different countries are going to have a say in things that happen. And of course, Russia has probably had a disproportionate amount of say and influence, and they've certainly spent a lot of money. But to suggest that the United States has become, more volatile directly as a result of that, I don't think so. I think that the systems in America, for all of their flaws, they work pretty well. People on the right have criticized the last election, saying that Joe Biden's not the legitimate president, things like that. But at the end of the day, the political process that America has resulted in him winning the election. The political left made the same complaint about Donald Trump, that Russian interference created this monster and Donald Trump became the president. At the end of the day, you don't always get what you want out of life. You will often see politicians and political parties that will win when you don't think that they should. That's what happened with Donald Trump for a big part of the country. The reality is that's just part and parcel of living in a democracy. And I think that, democracy is chaotic. The political systems that we have in Western countries do have, they do tend to waste time. The politicians do tend to do things that we all look at and just go, what is going on? But that's better. That's a better system than anything else we've been able to come up with. So I think it's overstating it.
Well, everybody's pissed now. Like when you look at different the periods I've lived through. I'm a little kid in the 60s. Everybody's pissed at the late 60s, the generation gap, the Vietnam War, Nixon, and then the war ends. Nixon, is kicked out of office. And then we have the disco era, and everybody's happy and having lots of sex for about 5 years, giving each other herpes and AIDS. And then, then things get more contentious under Reagan and then kind of calm down in the 90s. And now we're just super pissed again. And like I lost 15 pounds under Trump because my bowels were always in an uproar. Food just would go right. I got irritable bowels. I just, I pooped a lot because it'd be crazy.
But you know what, Rick, but that's kind of my point. But that's kind of my point is that people, the right wingers at the moment feel the same way about the woke left and Joe Biden. And Joe Biden brought Dylan Mulroney, this trans person at the White House, all that sort of stuff. And I think people just need to just relax and not take politics so serious. Like, what did Donald Trump really do that was that bad? What is Joe Biden doing? If you're opposed to Joe Biden, what is he doing that's that bad? You might think that he muddles up some speeches and stuff, but you're going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? America's not going to collapse because of these things, and that's what everyone tries to make out on one side or the other.
Of stuff, of information and pseudo information that keeps us riled up all the time.
But that's the media manipulating you. It has nothing to do with the truth.
Well, I'm a sucker. I'm easily manipulated.
Easily manipulated, right?
And you used to write. I mean, that's so funny.
Now, Dan, I am going to have to ask you, what is it that you think I'm going to disagree with you on? Because all I heard was I'm going to disagree with you, and then as I arrived. So what was it that you actually said?
It was Epstein, and you told me one time that you thought that that girls were consenting and what he did wasn't really that bad and blah 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 blah. And so
hang
on.
Here we go.
Hold up a second. I made a comment to you off air, Dan, and that was not supposed to be repeated on air. But now that you have, I didn't say that what he did wasn't bad, and I didn't say that they were consenting. I was drawing the connection that the age of consent in the United States is higher than the age of consent elsewhere. And I just said to you that in some cases, some of those girls would have thought that this was going to be a great time. And obviously what's happened based on the interviews shows that it was more exploitative than otherwise. But the conversation I had with you was not an on-air conversation. So I prefer it.
I apologize 100%. My point that it was a Mossad operation intended to embarrass and to blackmail world leaders and wealthy people. That's what it was all about.
Well, I
Okay,
know
Although
what I
that
was
may
bringing up had nothing
that may
to
well
do with
be.
blackmailing. I noticed over the years particular photos of people who got together as friends over the years, not once, not shaking hands, but like buddy drinking ham party. So I was just bringing up something to that effect, but I want to bring up something a little more serious.
But that may be the case, though, Kimberly. I just want to say in relation to those girls, it may be the case that it wasn't because of blackmail as such. But I think that something that people need to remember is that, you know, the very, very wealthy people, the very, very powerful people often have a fairly small group. And when somebody's brought into that group, you know, they'll end up taking photos with them and things like that, where there may not be anything untoward. But also, I think that very powerful people, if you're 40 and you're interested in a girl who's 25, you know, and you're in a very powerful position or you're very wealthy, how do you do that without being accused of being exploitative? And this is what really Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, when Monica Lewinsky says, hey, I was 22 years old and the president of the United States was interested in me, you can kind of understand that, you know, yeah, like she's going to be somewhat smitten with getting attention from such a powerful figure.
Shaquille, I hear what you're saying because there was hold on a second, Shaquille. I hear what you're saying because there was actually an NAACP person that's still involved with the NAACP that was actually caught in some of that kind of conversations because definitely there were notions that there might have been things going on, but there were never any proof of it. But it was that whole power broker kind of thing. And if you're a power broker, then yes, folks might try to exploit that power broker situation. That is not to forgive them when they exploit those people and things in that nature. But there are some groupies out there that will try to manipulate it in such a way to get the gain that they want as well. So I do think that we have to look at the entirety of the story, and that is not to forgive.
But Mark, that's my point. What do you do if you're a powerful person and you're interested in somebody? Do you have to not show any interest in somebody unless they're in your league and equally a powerful and wealthy person? Because if you're a famous actor or a comedian or whatever, and you show interest in somebody, everybody is going to suggest.
I have a serious question for the panel. What is the youngest age in the United States that you can get married legally if you're a female? The youngest age.
12.
Well, that's correct. Very good. You did your homework. The state of Massachusetts allows you to get married, and so do other states, at age 12. Now here's
it's not just Massachusetts. It's many states in America.
Yeah.
Many states in the United States allow that.
Okay. As we're sitting talking,
men make the laws. I'm just saying, women would not allow that.
But no, sorry, Kimberly. On that issue, you're incorrect. On that issue, women were more than happy to pass this sort of legislation that allowed kids to get married at 12.
But just realize it's age 12. Yet at the same time as we're talking here, there's a person that I know that's sitting in jail for 10 years, because he had consensual sex with a 16-year-old or 17-year-old. Okay. So
Nick, this is where the rules are ridiculous, because in California, you know, the lovely liberal California, the age of consent is 18. And so what you're saying high school kids, where the boys turned 18, the girl's 3 months younger than him, she's 17. They go to the high school prom, and he ends up being jailed and put on the sex offenders registry. This just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me too. But
as I said, this is where movements like the Me Too movement and other types of movements have really caused a lot of drama, I think, where they're not factoring in when people are of similar ages, and they're also not factoring in where there is an imbalance of power. How do you have that relationship without it being suggested that you abused the power in your relationship in order to have a sexual relationship with somebody? I mean, it becomes complicated.
Okay, my opinion, this gentleman is sitting in jail for 10 years because of the Me Too movement. In other words, it was an anti-male movement. Remember, he's with a 16 or 17-year-old, and certainly he should not have had consensual sex, but he did.
I know of
and
a
then
man
he goes
who
to jail
got
for 10 years.
sent for life for supposedly having consensual sex with a 16-year-old. He got sent for life.
That's what I'm saying.
Politically, there's
no proof.
Where's the male outrage?
Politically, there's no upside for the legal system for
It's
a
the judge at the
to
time.
release a sex offender, even if it's a miscarriage of justice, because that'll be used against the judge. So if
Elections.
if you watch the documentary about Epstein,
Elections.
the girls involved were tricked and coerced.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I'm writing a novel about the near future where things are even creepier than they are today. And in the future, rich people go to an agency that recruits, 18, 19-year-old girls, psychologically screens them and engages in hyper consent, fully informs them about the creepy shit they're going to do, and has them sign a zillion releases and screens them to make sure that they're psychologically unlikely to be driven crazy by, being preyed on by rich old men. And
Rick, hold on a second. You say this is science fiction. I know some women and some other folks that would argue that
That
this is
sounds like
already
science
taking
fiction to
place
me, Rick.
right now and
Yeah.
it's going on in our modern day time, and it is not that dystopian or that far from the reality of
Well,
what
and
folks are
I'm going to
dealing with.
share
Because
real.
as you were describing it, I was going like, I've heard of some of these cases even
Look,
now.
I remember when I drove from LA to Vegas, there's big billboards advertising strip clubs. When I was over there, it was 2020, and it said now showing the class of 2019. I mean, this sort of stuff goes on all the time, and I think, but to the off-air comments I've made to Dan, when you say these girls were tricked, that may well be the case. However, I think that there is a lot of girls, and it's not politically correct to say this, who
Exploited.
would have actually consented to doing this because, hey, I get to fly around in a private jet. I get to meet with some of the world's most powerful people. There are some people, Rick, you may not think it's okay, but there are some that would have. Just like an 18-year-old girl, Netflix did a documentary, I think it's called Hot Girls Wanted. These girls are 18 years old and they're going into porn. But, they go in for 6 months, they come out, and then for the rest of their lives, they've got this hanging over them that people can look them up and all that sort of stuff. That's very exploitative, but they consent to doing it. So my point is that I don't know whether you necessarily would have to use trickery and exploit people, but you would actually be able to, unfortunately, find people. And those of us that have a bit more life experience and knowledge aren't imparting that. And we're watching young people make mistakes that affect them for the rest of their lives.
I'm
It's a very
friends
dreadful.
with all sorts
Shaquille,
of
we
sex
saw a young
workers
lady
on-
we saw a
I'm
young lady
friends
just
with
around the
sex
corner
workers
because I'm over
on
here in
Twitter,
Durham. There was a young lady in
and-
Duke that literally made her living off of becoming a porn star. I'm not sure if she's into corporate America now or whatever, but this was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Good for her. I was kind of proud of her because she didn't have enough money to go to school, and so she didn't do like heavy porn, but she did, strip dancing and stuff like that. And they let her go from the school because they said it was unethical. But I want to bring up something that is very unethical. It is happening today. I am a witness of it. It is very disturbing. And I want people to kind of think about this because it happened to me and it's bothering me really, really bad because it's making me sick. Rick, how you said it's making me very sick. But I have a lot of people on my site, and it's very hard to keep Messenger from certain people. But when people send me things, I will block them. And if they're bad, I will report them. Well, this one person kept sending me some very disturbing videos, porn videos of girls, very young girls. And I immediately reported it to Facebook. Okay. And when you do that, you are blocked from communicating with them, which is fine with me. But I wanted Facebook to do something about it because if they're sending it to me, they're sending it to others and they're sending me communication to talk to me about it. But this porn was very disturbing. So I reported it. All right. Did Facebook take that person down? No. But do they take Nick or Rick or you down for saying a word or doing something? Yes, immediately they'll put, but they didn't. They not only didn't let him block him or take him down, they allowed him to send massive amounts of porn. Now I'm getting thousands of porn, and he's harassing me. He's saying very rude and crude things to me. So they didn't take him down. They didn't stop him. So I reached out to my friends in the cybersecurity world and said, why is Facebook not even stopping him. And odds are he's probably doing this to young girls and recruiting young girls. And they said that's because every time they send this out and people click on it, Facebook gets a lot of credibility for the clicks, the views, and stuff like that. So they're not going to stop the horrendous amount of disgusting videos being sent and of young women. But I reported him. Did they stop him? No. Did they take him down? No. In fact, they now allowed him to send more and harass. So there's something very sick and disturbing about our media and social media to allow this. And I'm going to get to the bottom of it, but
I'll just
decided
I'll
enough
say secretly, if it's
start my own.
If it's exploiting children, then you should report it to law enforcement, not just to Facebook. And if it's not that, but it's actually with consenting adults, I believe in the United States, certainly, I believe it is a crime to actually disseminate this type of material without the consent of the receiving party.
Exactly.
So I'd report it to law enforcement and insist that they do something about it.
We got to report it, and you got to report to the right law enforcement that can actually do something about it.
Yeah, because they can't. Cyber is a whole different.
That's a whole different game.
In the 70s,
Rick had a point.
In the 70s, when I was a kid, there was a war on porn. There was a discussion about, should we stop porn? Is porn good for people because it provides a release, or does porn make people rapey and crazy? And that debate is over because porn has won. There's an unlimited cornucopia of porn available on the internet. And it gets more and more extreme because people get jaded. The easy availability of porn everywhere means that, somebody my age, somebody in their 40s who's been looking at it for 25 years, needs more and more extreme stuff to get that same jolt. It's, as with opioids, you got to.
Well, that's not for everyone, Rick. Some people will look at it. When I say some people, I mean men. Will often look at it and look at stuff that they would never do and wouldn't want to do to their wives or girlfriends, right? So they're looking for that really grotty kind of thing where it's like, yeah, this is great. This is something I will never actually do to somebody that I care about, but I can kind of watch this and enjoy it. That's where a lot of porn customers are.
You look at porn and then you go,
hold on a second.
Look at porn and then you
You
go out on the
can find
street.
things in that lane that are totally illegal, totally immoral, to Dan's point and everything. And I don't know that there's people that want to be encouraged on it. I mean, you can find things in the porn lane that cover everything from bestiality to pedophilia to a number of other things that I think all of us here agree are horrible in society and all in that space. So I'm not going to forgive people that are doing illegal things and probably should be put on registries and everything.
But the comments that I made in response to Rick were, I was referring to stuff that's legal. I'm not talking about illegal things. And certainly I would say that if you find yourself attracted to children for whatever reason, you need to go and seek help immediately, and there is help out there for people, right? So go and get that help. Don't pursue it any further, because you don't want to do that to yourself and mess your brain up and have all these sorts of issues. And children and childhood is a magical time. It's something that we should all be protecting in society, making sure that our kids are safe and secure.
One of the questions I was going to ask you, Nick, is too often, and since we're talking about this and it is a media show, too often we hear about these registries, and these registries exist. They're supposed to keep people informed as to who is the bad apples in society, particularly those that might have committed these various kinds of crimes and everything. And I don't know that those, one, are accurate, and two, that they actually do a good job of pinpointing folks, or that they are even legal in what they do. But you're the lawyer on here, so I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because that is something that they will even advertise. Talking about Facebook, they will advertise that you can find the folks that are the bad apples of society from some of these sites that they make available.
I hate to say it. I don't work in that area of the law, so I'll defer.
If you ever played the video game Tetris for like 2 hours, when you quit playing, your brain is still programmed to be playing Tetris, and everywhere you look, you kind of see blocky, shapes and stuff. Same with porn. I'm talking about legitimate, not just regular porn, not the super creepy illegal porn. But if you look at porn and then you go out and walk around on the street, if you've been looking at, like, I don't know, some video that's butts, when you watch, you have to reprogram your brain to be not porny when you walk away from the porn. It's insidious. Plus we're wired by evolution to be turned into idiots by sex. And
Well, I
then
hear what you're saying, but Rick and Shaquille and everybody, and even Nick, I was going to give y'all a nice little compliment about the network, because I did get an email today that is getting us away from that discussion and everything, but I think y'all will enjoy it. I was reaching out, as I oftentimes do, for guests and everything, and one of the guests wrote me back earlier today and said that they could not be on the show. And they said that the reason they couldn't be on the show, because apparently they're a noted analyst. I wish I had pulled up that email, but I didn't. But they are noted analysts on CNN. So they feel that we are TV competition. So they said that they have an exclusive contract. So therefore, they cannot be on Pod TV because they have an exclusive contract with CNN. So we have now reached the big time, because I just got an email where we were rejected because they have an exclusive contract with CNN.
Oh, we had more followers than CNN Plus.
He rejected us. I love it, Mark. He rejected us because we're competition with CNN. Can you believe that? Well, we do have 300.
Well, if we go back a year or so, there was one show that Nick and I were on, where we actually had higher ratings, didn't we, Nick, than the CNN show at the same time?
Because sometimes CNN doesn't get good ratings, and sometimes we get hundreds of thousands of people watching us. What can I tell you? I think we were at like 260,000 today, so it really varies.
I'm at 1.6 million.
Down below.
Oh, Kimberly's the superstar.
Kimberly's the superstar, but apparently the person was doing a lot around the presidential election and all that. It was actually a young lady, and the letter I got back was, "Thanks for reaching out to Beth Sanner, but she has a contract with CNN, so she can do other TV interviews. Best to you, Sharon," who was her PR agent. So apparently we're competing with CNN, and we've been turned down.
Good. CNN.
So just going back to Rick's comments. So Rick, I think that there's a real issue when you've got, and this is generally coming out of California, where you've got kids being told that they can change their gender, they can start puberty blocking medications and things like that at very, very young ages, right? They're being told that they're in charge of their body, whatever they want to do, they can do, but they can't have sex with people in their own peer group. They can't do that. They can smoke marijuana at 14. They can't smoke cigarettes until they're 21. And then you say to the 18-year-old boy who goes out with his 17-year-old girlfriend that you're going to lock him up, put him on the sex offenders registry, etc. Okay, but if the 17-year-old kills somebody, they can be treated as an adult. I mean, what gives? I mean, of course, our young people are growing up confused.
A lot of states have Romeo and Juliet laws where if you catch a 15-year-old
California doesn't.
Sex with a 16-year-old, it's not.
California doesn't, Rick.
Okay.
Rick, California doesn't. And I know this because a particular case, I'm aware of a particular case where this exact situation happened. He was 18, she was 17. She was like 3 weeks younger than him, 2 or 3 weeks younger than him. And I don't think that they even had full sex, but they were sexually, they were in the throes of something on prom night. And the parent of another kid happened to catch them doing stuff, and he ended up on the sex offenders registry. I can't fathom how that's protective to children.
But hear me out on this. How can you put somebody on the sex offender directory when they are not even legal to drink or legal to smoke?
That's my whole point. That's my whole point. When it comes
to control people,
when it comes to rules around our young people, some of our rules are absurd. You're prepared to put a machine gun in the hands of a poor 18-year-old kid and send them out in the military to go and shoot people and die potentially for the country and the freedoms it represents, but he can't drink or have a cigarette? Are you kidding me? And then, by the way, American service people, once they've left the United States, the age of majority, the age where you can drink and smoke in almost every other country is 18. So an American kid goes overseas to fight for the freedoms the United States has, just so that when they first get overseas, they all of a sudden have freedoms that they don't have back home. This is absurd. It's ridiculous. And as I said, meanwhile, you're happy to tell 12-year-olds, 11 and 12-year-olds, that they can start gender changing, medications and puberty blocking medications, which will have long-term effects on their fertility. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think the media needs to be more honest with people, and there needs to be more discussion about these things.
It actually does make sense. If you're going to put arms in somebody's hands, you want them to shoot a gun. You don't want them drunk, Shaquille. So the thing is, they don't want them drinking because they want them shooting, and they want them shooting sober. So that's the reason for that.
Well,
in terms of
I can tell you the rates of alcohol abuse in the military is extremely high. The idea that you would tell a kid that they should die for the country, but they can't have a drink, I think that's absolutely absurd. Right? You can go die for your country, but don't you dare have a cigarette first.
No.
Or sex.
Who's
Or sex. If you're drafted at 18, that's it. You got no chance.
So Ronald Reagan gave us the 21 drinking age. A lot of it used to be up to the states. But when Reagan was president, Reagan said, unless you make the drinking age 21, you're not going to get federal highway funds. And every single state, I believe, said, okay, all right.
Well, if that's the case, it should be challenged.
Isn't there a saying?
If that's the case, that should be challenged, and it should especially be challenged in front of this Supreme Court, because this Supreme Court has upheld in Roe v. Wade that states' rights, states get to make the call. It goes back to the state legislature. So if it really is true, what you've said, that the alcohol drinking age was put there by Ronald Reagan and forced upon the states, then the alcohol lobby should challenge at the Supreme Court and hold the Supreme Court to account, send it back to the states.
The first bar I worked in was for 18-year-olds. Was watered down beer for people who were 18. So much vomiting, so much drown night. All you could drink, $5 for guys, $4 for girls, 18, 19-year-olds. Just that was one of my jobs, was cleaning up the barf on ground.
Here's a question. But here's a question I've got. I've gone through the United States, and many of the states I've been to, I've actually seen advertising telling parents that if they allow their children to drink, they can be prosecuted. Now, again, I come from countries where there's a bit more freedom than that. Most Western countries will say that if a parent is there, the parent may allow their child to have a sip of wine or have a glass of wine with dinner or have something. But in America, that choice has been taken away from you because the government thinks it's no good for you and your family. Again, my response is going to be, and I know conservatives, Dan, aren't going to like this, but if you want the government off your back, they need to be off everybody's back for everything. Parents and families should make this decision, not the government.
Well, I think in the country you're in currently, they do have decisions making by their government because they're a dry country, basically, in Dubai. Shaquille.
Dubai, I can drink as much as I like in Dubai.
Yeah.
And get much higher quality stuff for a much lower price.
Yeah.
And don't forget, I flew over here on Emirates in first class, so I'm drinking $1,000 bottles of Hennessy Paradis on the plane. So Dubai's great.
Oh, that's what I thought. It's the freedom state.
We're at the hour, and thank you.
We're
for
at the hour. We
watching.
got to go. Oh shoot! All right, we're just having
And
a good time.
we'll see you guys next week on the media.
On the media show. All right, we'll see you next week. Bye bye.